This week on Overbore, cars that lived up to the hype, cars that didn't kill us, the death of the MPV, and why it's all our fault.
Our fault?
Our fault. Your fault.
What did I do?
Well, it's not actually your fault because you bought one.
Oh, yeah.
Hello and welcome to Overbore. It's episode 5.
Is it? Fuck Christ.
I'm Scrof, and this is...
Me.
Tim.
Him. Me.
I'm Scrof, this is Kitch.
That as well.
Yep. And this is our podcast. Hello.
It's ours. No one else can have it. It's ours. Our property.
Do they really want it?
For the right price, actually. Everything's for sale for the right
True,
price.
yeah. Yeah, we're offers invited. Do you want to buy our podcast?
5 episodes in, we're trying to flog it off. Make some money out of it.
Isn't it? Absolutely amazing. So welcome to Overbore. Just a quick reminder, you can find us on many social media platforms if you want to.
OnlyFans.
We are on... Oh, not yet.
Grindr.
There's another monetization option.
Yes.
But you can find us on Blue Sky, find us on Threads, on Instagram, and on... But we don't talk about that.
Twitter.
And you can also write to us if you'd like. Please do write to us. We love to hear from you. The email address is overborepod, all one word, @gmail.com. Please do send us your thoughts on our podcasts.
I thought you were going to say, please send us your thoughts.
Yeah, just send us your thoughts.
People are going to send us messages going, have you wondered about clouds?
Yeah. If that's what you want to send us, then
why clouds?
Then send us thoughts about clouds. Please do, But also we are collating reader questions and...
I've reclined my seat too much, sorry.
We are collecting reader questions for a putative Q&A episode in the future.
Putative?
When we'll thing that might happen in the future. So if you want to send us your questions, if you want to ask how Rich maintains his hair in such a beautiful manner, for example, just send us an email. That question and many more will be answered in a future episode.
You've caught me off guard with that one. I cannot give you any information or any advice as to how to look after your hair because I don't. There we are. I cut it once a year.
So don't bother sending that question in because we've already answered.
No, send the question in. It's good for the.
It's good for the
engagement
stuff. Yeah. So welcome to episode 5. What have you been up to this week, Rich?
This week I have been working on that up there.
Good. Well, that's filled some time.
Actually, that's a double whammy because even if you're watching this, that was crap because you still can't see what
exactly.
It was. So there's a red Citroen VX up on the ramp.
Yeah, that's why he's looking up at it. It's not levitating
underneath it. It is a 16 TXI.
A 16 TXI.
A 16 TXI. Everyone goes, oh, 16 valves, they're worth something. Oh, they're rare, aren't they? No, 16 valves are not rare anymore. Because it's the cooking models that no one keeps.
That's it.
There was only ever, at most, this is a 16 TXI automatic, I should add.
Oh.
There were only ever 14.
14 16 TXIs?
There
were only ever 14?
In the UK.
Wait. So even when they were new, they were only 14?
Yes, that's how many they sold.
How is that? Was that just because they didn't sell that many?
Well, because it came out at the end of 92.
Okay.
So it's a run-out model.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's a single-point injection 1600 with a catalytic converter.
Okay.
So it's like that, as late as BXs get, really. BX hatchbacks were produced up to about November 92.
Okay.
I think that's when production stopped. You see them registered in 93, but they've just sat around.
Yeah.
And that one is now one of 2 or 3.
No, really?
Yeah.
That's
no
probably
one's bothering to save them either.
That is one of the rarest cars in the country. Then.
Well, there are probably quite a few cars out there where there's only 1 or 2 left. Of certain specs, if you think about BXs,
I suppose it's just
there's
a
like
spec,
600 or 700 of them on the road. But for a spec, for a 16 TXI, there's about 1 or 2 of those left. And I have this week been repiping the suspension front to back, which is actually quite a therapeutic job.
Is it?
If you're being paid to do it properly.
if you're being paid to do it.
Well,
it's a therapeutic job.
To do it properly, you have to take the back axle out and the fuel tank out.
Okay.
And then you can run it nice and neat in the way it's meant to go. But people don't want to pay for that normally. So you have to kind of bodge it and go underneath, which I don't. I just say, I don't want to do it.
Right.
But he's having me do it all properly.
Right, okay.
And I've done the fuel lines as well. So it's got new pipes down both sides of the car.
Oh, nice.
So, and I've even I was supposed to do that a couple of weeks ago, but I found rust where the pipes go. So I've had to that's a rusty car.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
But it looks like it's being saved, though.
Oh, it's definitely being saved. Yeah.
Well, I say it looks like it's being saved. I'm drawing that assumption of the fact every time I've come here to record a podcast, that car's been on that ramp.
It's a little bit more red than it was.
It's getting a little bit more red each time.
Slowly getting more red. The bits of rust on it are slowly turning into bits of red. Bit by bit. Yeah, it's a hell of a lot of work. It only came in for an MOT. It did, genuinely.
Really?
It came in for an MOT. Get it MOT'd, and I think it was something out. I can't remember.
When was that?
Oh, God, 18 months ago?
That's the truth. Blimey.
Yeah, it's many thousands of pounds later, and to the point I question. I'm not a good businessman. I messaged the guy and say, I've just seen how much you've spent so far, and I feel a bit sick.
Yes,
and that's my business.
Yeah,
I'm supposed to be like not saying that, but I'm sort of like, mate, you're spending too much on this car. Like my time, don't pay me, just take it away. But he wants to get it done, and he wants to leave it to us. The stupid thing is, it's going to look exactly the same when it leaves. It's going to look no different. In fact, if anything, it looks worse because it's going to have a primered panel on the side.
Oh no!
So it's just going to look worse than it did when it leaves. It's a stupid thing. It's all underneath.
I suppose here's the thing: we should be grateful there are people like that out there.
You have to be
willing to spend so much money on a car that doesn't warrant it, because it's only because of people like that those cars survive.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd have none of these.
Yeah, if you like to see
cars left.
If you like to see certain cars survive that aren't, because I mean the sports models, the hot models, they're the ones that everyone saves. They're the ones that always end up being saved. Yeah. No one saves the 1.6 petrol. Even BXs. I mean, the turbo diesels were popular with those. People will save the turbo diesels. No one touches the 1.6 petrols or the 1.4s, and it's a shame.
Yeah, agreed. And
if you want street furniture. Yeah, stuff you would have just walked past in 1991 and not even...
Because those are the cars that those are the ones that people's dads owned. There's the one...
Well, maybe not 16 TXI Auto.
No, given they were only 14, I suppose. That's a very fair point.
But yeah, I mean, there was, I like to see, if I go to a car show and you see a Cavalier 1.6L...
That's the second time on this podcast you've mentioned the Cavalier 1.6L.
I didn't mention it as a 1.6L before.
You did, on the first episode.
No, I just said Cavalier Mark III.
You definitely said a 1.6L.
I think Cavalier 1.6. I could have been talking about the LS.
Oh, maybe.
Or the...
Were you talking about the LS?
Maybe. Or the GL.
Or the GL.
Or the...
Or CD. Did they do a 1.6 CD?
No,
they probably didn't do a 1.6 CD.
No,
my dad had
a 2 litre.
Oh, Mark III, okay. My dad had a Mark II.
Well, the basic Mark III Cavalier.
Was that an Envoy?
I was going to say there was an Envoy.
Yeah.
But before that was the facelift.
Was that the facelift? Before that was just an L, surely, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's
just an L.
It might have just been base. It might have just been like
there may have been a nameless base model.
So I went up to Newcastle once in a Cavalier 1.6L.
Okay.
I had bought a set of Speedline Comp 2 alloys.
Right.
In fact, we met because of Capris.
Yep.
The Capri that my friend had, he realised he had a Capri and got rid of it. And he woke up one morning, looked outside and went,
"Oh, what have I done?
What the hell?" And it had an RS body kit and everything. And he looked out the window and he went,
"Do I remember it had an RS body kit that was not particularly brilliantly attached, if my memory serves."
Possibly.
Is that right?
It was a laser, but it still had the laser wheels.
Yes.
So it looked like a shopping trolley.
It did.
And he got rid of that. And then many weeks and months have passed. And then he eventually found himself with... I'll tell the story of the Fiat Panda another day. But after the Fiat Panda, he found himself with a 1.6 Cavalier L. And I bought a set of alloy wheels.
Right.
Speedline Comp 2 alloy wheels. 16-inch. 210 quid. Absolute steal. Only problem is they're in Washington, which is unless you go to America.
Yeah. Not that Washington.
No, not that Washington. The one that their Washington's named after.
Yeah.
I went up to Newcastle in this Cavalier, and we were going to go in the morning, and we thought we're going and got a KFC, sleep in his dad's like haunted Victorian townhouse, massive house, 3-story thing,
right?
Like sleeping on the sofa, hearing the clock, the grandfather clock, and then every now and then you hit it stops, and you go. Your ears, you're like, why is it? Oh no, it's me, it's fine. And
didn't get a great night's sleep that night then.
Well, in the end, we got to about 1:30. My mate just turned around and said, "Shall we just go now?" Yeah, we'll just go now. So we jumped in the Cavalier 1.6L, which front bumper was held on with a nail that had been bent round so it couldn't come off.
Classy.
And it was in the Doom Blue.
Yeah.
Obviously, J-Reg,
yes.
Doom Blue. And we drove it to, was it H-Reg? Might have been H-Reg. And we drove it up there. And took turns sleeping on the back seat. And,
brilliant. And
it munched the whole journey there. Got up there, rung the guy when we got there. Hi, coming for those wheels today? Yeah. Any chance I could pick them up in about half an hour? This was like 6:30 in the morning. He's like, well, I'm about to go to work. And I was like, yeah, we're up already. So we met up with him, gave him the money, because they were that cheap, it was worth going
of course,
there
yeah.
And loaded him into the car, turned around, drove straight back.
Sure.
So we left at 1:30 in the morning and got back at 10 to 1 in the afternoon.
Brilliant.
In a 1.6
So literally a 12-hour round trip.
To anyone who says a Cavalier is a good motorway car, there's your proof.
Well, do you know what's really funny about that is I actually have a very good friend of mine had a Cavalier 1.6L and drove it to Newcastle.
Whoa.
I know. His was red though, so it's not the same. It's not the same friend, and it's not the same Cavalier.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, funnily enough, I was working at the Vauxhall dealer at the time. Do you remember I used to work at the Vauxhall dealership?
Yeah. Yes.
I did, and they had he needed a car. And they'd had this Cavalier coming as a Part X, and they were just about. They had obviously it was an H-Reg Cavalier, and this was 2002, 2003. So they had.
It's only 12 years old.
I know, it's mad.
And you look back at
absolutely mad, absolutely mad. But they I think they wanted like 150 quid to get shot of it. So I phoned him up and I said, look, they've just had this Cavalier coming. It's got about 6 months MOT left on it. Do you want it? And he was like, yeah, whatever, go on.
It's better than walking.
Yeah, literally that. And he just got rid of. I think he just got rid of his first car, which was like a 1.3 litre Escort Mark IV, and I think Rust had claimed it. Anyway, he had this Cavalier for a few months as a stopgap before he got a Mark II Golf GTI, and he and I think 4 of his uni mates all drove it up to Newcastle and back again. And again, it was a 1.6L, and he came back saying, look, that car is dull as ditch water, but it sat on the motorway so well.
Yeah, they do.
And that was always the thing they had going for them. Those and the Vectras, although they were incredibly boring, they were really, really, really good motorway cars, which, to be fair to them, was exactly what they were supposed to be.
I know the Vectra, yes, I can see the Vectra are pretty boring. Mark III Cavalier, yes, normally, but I tell you what, an SRI with the red stripe and those wheel trims, and like just. There's just something about it. I don't know what it is.
I got to drive a V6 Mark III Cavalier once.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Slightly disappointing, I have to say. It was the steering's a bit light and a bit kind of.
I'd imagine
fairly remote, and I mean, it's not a sports car. No. But even so, by the standards of the time, if you were to compare it to something like a 405 of the time, or a 406 V6 or something,
sort of handling, wasn't it?
Or even like a Laguna or whatever, it would just be so much nicer. The Cavalier just felt quite remote and not all that.
Although I got a What Car magazine group test because it's got a BX16 valve in it, so of course I got it.
So of course you got it, yeah.
Of course I got it, and that had a Cavalier GSI, Primera GT, 405 MI16.
Interesting.
Yeah, we're getting serious.
Yeah.
And the Cavalier, I think the Cavalier won.
Really?
I think they rated it. They said that it had, but I don't know. I always look back at What Car magazine.
That did have a great engine in it, though. The Cavalier.
Yeah, the red. Well, it had it didn't have the best one. The best one was the Astra, because the Astra.
Was it different?
Well, no, it was the same engine, but the Astra, up to a certain serial number, had used to call it Cod's cast pistons. So it had, Cod's cast head rather.
I've heard of this.
So it was like basically, it was Cosworth.
Cosworth did it, yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And whereas the later ones were kind of done on the cheap a little bit. So it's the same architecture. It's the same kind of. They are still good engines.
Yeah.
The red top, they called it the 20XE. Was it 20XE?
C20XE, I think.
No, C20XE was the Ecotec one, I think.
Sorry, right, it's an X.
I think. No. I think it's just 20X. I think 20E was the 8 valve.
Okay.
20XE, I think, is the 16 valve.
Readers, correct us if we're wrong. I mean, listeners.
Sometimes you do that.
Readers,
sometimes you say things wrong on purpose so that people engage and correct you.
Correct.
But I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing right now.
I'm pretty sure C20 was the later silver top version of it.
Okay.
The Ecotec badge.
Are you sure that's not the X20XE?
No, I think that's the later Ecotec.
Okay.
I think this is the Ecotec that went into the Cavalier like 94.
Okay.
I think. I could be talking shite.
I'm going to bow to your greater
lack of knowledge
of these things. I'm going to bow to your
all I can tell you is that they were there was something about those engines. They were revvy, but they were punchy.
Lots of grunt as well.
They were guts, but they revved.
Yeah.
And I can tell you completely unofficially that a Mark II Astra GT 16 valve and a Citroen BX 16 valve, hypothetically speaking, nothing between them.
Interesting.
On a public road.
That's pretty good.
At night.
Yeah.
Nothing between
nothing
them.
between them.
In theory.
No.
Nothing between them.
In theory.
Yeah. I think in a dead straight line, if you had a runway that was limitless, probably back the Astra in a dead straight line. Yeah, probably in a dead straight line. But throw some corners into it. It goes the other way. The Astra was not a live machine. But the Cavalier in the what car, they were like, oh, it's up there with the 405 and the Primera.
Well, it's funny because I
was reading that thinking,
I wonder if it's a similar phenomenon as, I don't know if it's the same, but I always remember in the magazine test at the time, the Mark V Escort was absolutely atrocious, panned, obviously. But the reviews of the RS2000s and the Cosworth,
Richard Perry Jones set up,
exactly,
weren't they?
Yeah,
he worked.
The RS2000 was just a completely different kettle of fish and was actually quite good. And I actually even remember Top Gear saying it on. I think they did a group test of 6 hot hatches, and it was the RS2000, the Alpha 145 Cloverleaf, the ZX 16 valve,
I had one of them.
Golf GTI 16 valve,
what, Mark III,
which didn't do very well. And a couple of other things I can't remember. But I remember reading in that, they actually said of the Escort, they said, it is bonkers that Ford can do this with this Escort, and yet the standard one is so rubbish by comparison. Yeah. Or words to that effect. Like, these are like, it's amazing to us that this is so good when the standard car is so crap.
Yeah, there was some. I've heard that about the Mark 6 or Mark 5.
I mean, I've never driven one. I'd be quite intrigued to drive a Mark 6.
What, the RS2000?
Sorry, Mark 5 RS2000. Yeah,
they ruined it later on and made it 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Why?
I think because that was the fad at the time.
What we want, right? What we want. Should we give it more torque? No. Should we make it lighter? No.
Nope.
No. More grip? Yeah, we could do. What, traction control? No. Oh, okay. So what we're going to do? We're going to make it 4-wheel drive.
It was just such a fad at the time. And actually Ford, I have this feeling that Ford kind of caught up with the fad just as it was waning in popularity.
They did a Mondeo 4x4.
They did, that's the thing, they did a Mondeo 4x4.
Ford came along with the Sierra, didn't they? They were one of the first ones to join it.
True, that's a good point.
But I always wonder, did they make the Sierra 4-wheel drive because it had been found wanting when comparing it to other manufacturers? Yeah,
Could be.
The handling's not amazing. Yeah. You can't really push it because it just gets a bit tail happy.
I mean, but I don't know actually, because I've driven 4-wheel drive and 2-wheel drive Cosworth, and I enjoyed driving the 2-wheel drive Cosworth more. Well,
yeah, you probably would now.
Because the 4-wheel drive Sierra is not, there's a lot, it felt a lot more kind of, what's the word?
Fat, heavy.
A bit heavier, yeah, a bit heavier,
clunky.
not quite as involved.
Yeah, the front,
not quite as tactile as the 2-wheel drive one.
They have the front drive shaft go through the sump.
Do they really? Brilliant.
Yeah, I think it is.
Excellent.
One of them goes through. Something goes through the sump. Okay. And they have all completely different geometry on all the uprights.
I've driven a 4-wheel drive Sapphire, and I've driven a 2-wheel drive 3-door, and I've driven an Escort Cosworth as well. And the 2-wheel drive 3-door was by far the nicest of the lot to drive.
I've heard the Escort Cosworth's a bit of a letdown.
Well, I found it a bit of a. I think it was only a bit of a letdown because of the hype surrounding it.
Right.
I think because I drove one again. I drove one in my time on the Ford magazine, and everything I'd read about it in the 90s was, oh, it's Larry, it's crazy, it's worse. Yeah. And you get in it and you drive it, and it's like, oh yeah, this is quite nice.
Turbo lag, and then it's about 200 brake. And
it's quite nice. Yeah. It's nice. I liked it. It's good.
But when you're in an era where the Impreza turbos come out.
Yeah, this is the thing. I was expecting to blow my mind.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, this is cool. And that was it. You know, I was like, oh, this is quite nice. Yeah, good. I like it. Comfy.
First thing that should come to mind. Comfy.
Yeah, comfy. It's comfy. It's quite quick. It looks leery. I like it, but it just didn't. I think I was underwhelmed because I was expecting it to absolutely just shred my brain with its leeriness, you know. But it just really wasn't that. Don't get me wrong. It's not a. I wouldn't ever sit here and try and tell you, oh, it was a bit of a letdown. But it was. But I think that's only because of what it had been built up to be, probably in my mind, and hyped up to.
So what car, if you could think of a car that was, I realise we're getting away from
we're going down a rabbit hole.
We're going down a rabbit hole
here.
Plan. But if you had a car that had been hyped up for such a long time, and it took you so long to drive one, and when you did, it didn't disappoint, what would that be?
Oh, the one that springs to mind is probably Lotus Carlton.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Which, again...
Well, just because it's crazy fast?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So the thing about the Carlton, what amazed me about the Lotus Carlton was, again, I thought it was going to be another Escort Cosworth at first.
Right.
Because I went up to Luton to drive it. It was Vauxhall's Heritage one. I drove it actually out of the factory at Luton. I was driving it through
Under
Luton.
watchful eyes.
No, they let me loosen it by myself. It's like, all right.
Oh, they weren't even like watching you at the gate, though. You be careful with that.
They're pretty trustworthy with journalists, to be fair. They don't let you loosen it if they trusted you.
Yeah.
If they knew you, you know. But they were quite good. They used to, because Vauxhall's Heritage Fleet used to be based in a little shed back at Luton.
I've heard Vauxhall's Heritage Fleet used to be good.
No, it still is, but it's not quite as accessible as it used to be. But it used to be in a shed, and they used to have these open days. They'd invite journalists, and they'd get out, they'd say, right, we've got the Vauxhall Cavalier and the Lotus Carlton and the Vauxhall Royale and this, that and the other. You can come in the Calibra and you come up and drive, just take them out for a drive. They invite a bunch of legends. Well, what do you want to drive? You want to drive that one? Okay, yeah, take it out. And on one of these days, I drove the Lotus Carlton. And so, yeah, I was driving it out through Luton, just kind of going, it feels quite muted and quite like, quite a lot of sound deadening, like in that very 80s kind of lots of velour, quite plush, I thought this
shag part.
I feel like, it felt like the Executive Express you want a Carlton to be fair. And I kind of thought to myself, is this going to be a bit of a disappointment? Is this going to be like a little bit like the Escort Cosworth? Am I going to find myself going, it's not quite as... And then I got a point when I opened it up and I was like, whoa, this is really very quick, know, really very quick.
It's 370 horsepower.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. And it's
crazy.
And I think that's the thing that blew my mind about it, is it does do that Jekyll and Hyde thing very well, of like, I'm just a completely normal luxury saloon and I'm going to be very calm and comfortable. Then you open it up and you get that little bit of squirm from the back end and off it goes and the turbo's coming. You're, whoa, holy, you are quick. Okay, I see. Right, So, so that, I think probably, I enjoyed that and it kind of lived up to that in a way that I wasn't expecting, shall we say. The other one, and I never really got to drive it very quickly, was the Jag XJ220 that I got to drive.
You drove an XJ220?
I drove an XJ220, yes. Very briefly in the rain.
Oh.
Which was terrifying. So yeah, I would have to tell you, I didn't really get under the skin of it. I got probably 20 minutes in it, up the road and back again, and it was quite wet, and the roads were quite wet, and I was being really, really, really careful with it.
Very scared.
I was terrified. But I suppose in a way that does live up to the hype, because I think the few times I kind of did just put my toe down and I felt it, you could feel it.
It's that lag,
when
the lag starts to
and
go.
you're like, whoa, no, yeah.
Just starting to wake up.
So I think, there was definitely a bit of kind of, this is exactly as terrifying as I thought it probably would be.
Yeah.
It's a car that I'm sure you could do amazing things in, but you'd want to learn it and get to know it because it feels huge.
Yeah.
Because the sills are this thick. To get in over the sills are like this thick.
Yeah.
For our listeners, I'm making a large motion with my hands.
It's about yay big.
It's large.
Yeah.
But it's just a massive event of a thing to drive, And I couldn't tell you. I know what one is like to drive. I drove one, but I spent the entire.
You could at least if you die tomorrow and you're on your deathbed.
I know I've done that.
I drove an XJ220.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, not many people can say that.
No, well, that's true. I think that's the thing. It was one of those drives. There are sometimes, I find this with some cars you test, but with that XJ220 particularly, it's type 2 fun. You get back from doing it and you go, oh, I survived. Thank God for that.
You didn't enjoy it at the time because you were too busy being anxious.
You're spending your whole time going, oh God. And then you get back and you go, oh, I didn't crash it.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God for that. Now I can say I've driven an XJ220 and I didn't crash it.
It was like the first time I drove an Ultima, I was like that.
Yeah, well, there you go. You know exactly what I mean.
I've made it back. I haven't bankrupted myself.
That's exactly that. I find that driving half the modern performance stuff these days, because the Telegraph doesn't stump up for a test track or anything like that. So anything I'm testing on the public road. And in a lot of the modern performance stuff, you can't
really use it, can you?
Well, you can't try and find the limits of its handling and hang the back end out on the B3642 through little Piddle Trentide or whatever. You
Where's
just
that?
Can't do it. Dorset. Well, actually, the road name isn't, but the village is. I don't know about the road number. I just picked a number.
Oh, I was taking the piss. I thought that's a real place.
There is actually a place called Piddle Trentide in Dorset. Yes.
Piddle Trentide?
Yeah, there's a river called the River Piddle, and all the towns and villages along it are called like Upper Piddle.
It sounds like a tongue twister.
And there's a village called Piddle Trentide in Dorset. Yeah.
Right. Well,
anyway.
Yeah, that's not gone well, because I thought you were making it up, and I was going to make you point to it on a map, but
I probably can point.
I don't want you to.
Okay. We can do a road trip there. Overbore on tour to Little Piddle Trentide. Overtour to Piddle.
Overtour to Little.
Oh, I can't say it.
Easy for you to say.
Anyway, yeah, no, that's the point I was going to make, is that like a lot of this modern stuff, I get back from driving and I've given it beans on, as best I can safely on a back road, and I get back and I'm like, oh, good, that didn't go horribly wrong.
Yeah,
and I don't like it, to be honest with you. I'd much rather these days.
I don't like it because it's a customer's car normally when I'm doing that.
I
definitely don't want it to go wrong. That's why I'm pootling around. I just got to make sure it's not knocking anymore. What's the minimum distance I can drive it?
That's why I love an MX-5 or something like an MX-5.
Yeah.
Because it's just you can have so much fun in that car and not be in danger of hurting yourself or anyone else.
That's one of the only customers' cars that I've had in and driven hard was a Honda Beat.
Yes, great example.
9,000 RPM, and I'm going as fast as the whatever it is in
There's
front.
so much to be said for cars that you don't have to be going fast to have fun.
Yeah, I think that's the trick.
I completely agree, and I think more and more increasingly these days, finding those cars is like a little treat, it's a little gem. You have this is great. Suzuki Swift Sport's another one like that.
You want something with short gearing.
Yep.
Not a lot of torque. And I would say very communicative steering.
Exactly that.
And a characterful engine. That's the main thing.
And
you don't need the looks. You don't need even the driving position. Like a Suzuki Swift is quite a high up car compared to a Beat.
Yep.
But just something there where you can give it a bit of welly.
Yep.
And you're not going to be going crazy quick.
You want a nice bit of agility in the chassis, something that will change direction and is eager to change direction well. You want the chassis to feel quite nimble and agile. You just need low
weight, really, don't you?
Yeah, pretty much. That's it. I mean, it's the Colin Chapman school of thinking, isn't it? That really is what it comes back to, is a Saxo or something like that is.
Well,
is
I mean, my little 106, to be fair, the little 1.1
exactly
is. It's amazing how similar that is to we've got a Daihatsu Sirion as well.
Yep.
And which weighs pretty much the same and has near enough the same power. And it is half the fun of the 106. It's unbelievable.
Yep.
Like that car, the Daihatsu, you've got to change down when you go up hills. It's that I can't remember having a car where you have to change down to go up hills. It's crazy because the 106 you don't. You leave it in fifth, it will just pull up. Because the gearing's so much shorter.
Yep.
But I think for me, of all the cars I've ever been hyped up, and I drove it and went, I get it.
Yeah.
It was Lotus Lease.
Okay. So I've never driven an Elise.
Bog standard Series 2 Lotus Lease.
I'd love to have it. I'd love to have an Elise. Yeah.
As soon as I went round the first corner, I went,
I see.
Okay,
yeah.
It's like that. I mean, the Noble a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a bit of that with the Noble because just the way it was riding the bumps as it goes around corners. It was like, wow, this is something special.
Yep.
This one, not particularly hyped up, but it was by me.
Right, okay.
The first time I went out in a Xantia Activa.
Ah, yes.
We went up to test drive. Funnily enough, we chopped that Cavalier in for it.
Oh, really?
My friend chopped in a Cavalier. He wanted to know, what car shall I buy? I have a couple £100. He chopped in the Cavalier. They gave him 500 for the Cavalier. And the Xantia was up for 800 or something, 795 on a forecourt in Bedford. So I'd never been in one.
Yeah.
I just read about them and I told him, you should get one of these.
Yeah.
And we drove up there, Got in it, went out on a test drive. We drove off down this country road out in the middle of nowhere, bombed it along, 60 mile an hour, into a bend, turned into the bend, both burst out laughing. Oh, this is ridiculous. It's just literally gone round.
Completely level.
Yeah, for those who aren't aware, which should be no one, because everyone should be educated listening to this.
And they're about to be.
They're about to be. Well, the Xantia Activa commonly was considered to have active suspension. Mm-hmm. This is wrong. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have active suspension, but it does have hydropneumatic, hydroactive suspension, as any posh Xantia does. But it has active anti-roll bars. So the anti-roll bars, instead of having fixed links, they have hydraulic struts, and they can basically manipulate themselves. It can change the stiffness, if you like, of its anti-roll bars many times a second.
Yep.
And so basically you can drive around a corner, have a car that is soft but doesn't lean. And it's kind of disconcerting a little bit. But the things you can do around corners are insane.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
I'd love one.
And it's a car with like very little feedback.
Yeah.
So you've no idea where the limits are. You just have to put your trust in the car that it's going to gather it up.
Quite.
And
a lot of modern cars are like that.
Well, but they actually will gather it up.
Well,
they've got
true,
the age.
yes,
whereas what I've looked in the rearview mirror at my friend and his Xantia Activa that he used to have, watching him go sideways off a roundabout because he'd misjudged how much speed he could carry. But the best thing was it was 90 degrees in a four-wheel slide. Right, this is back when you were like 19.
Yeah.
Front bumper kissing the central reservation, but just missing the barrier. But it wasn't leaning. It was dead flat. It was dead flat. And he came up alongside us and he held his hand up and it's shaking.
Like Oh, gee.
The other thing about feedback they told you. Yeah, I get it now.
So, quick question for you. How are we doing on the Citroen swear jar this episode?
I don't think we've done too bad because we have mentioned them, yes, but we've mentioned many cars this episode. We haven't mentioned the car we're in.
Well, that's true. Well, there is a reason for the car.
There is a reason for the car we're in.
The car we're in.
Yes.
We're going to talk about MPVs. MPVs. And we are in Rich's Ford S-Max.
Well, my wife's.
Rich's wife's Ford S-Max.
Ford S-Max 2.5T
Now this
titanium.
Now we did touch on this last week, and there's a little bit of a cool thing about this because S-Max 2.5 turbos are very much kind of one of those weird cars that are known about by cognoscenti, and kind of thought, oh, that's a bit cool because it's a people mover with the engine from a hot hatch in it, and nobody can quite understand.
It's a people mover with the engine that was in a hot hatch that was taken from a big estate car.
Well, that's true. Yes, so good point. Yeah, it's a 5-cylinder 2.5 litre turbo.
Yes, a Volvo.
How much power does it put out? 222 horsepower?
It's supposed to be about 220, yeah.
222, yeah.
It's actually a fairly small turbo.
Yeah.
So
it's not too laggy.
No, it's not laggy
because it's a big thumping great 5-pot engine with a little bit of boost, really, isn't it?
Yeah, they've got variable valve timing.
Have they? Okay.
Yeah. The Focus ST that uses the engine, they are programmed to boost slightly differently to these.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have a... It's basically like it doesn't get the boost to come in as linear as low down.
Okay.
Deliberately.
Okay.
It kind of like it does it in stages. I forget the exact details. People will correct me on it. I think it limits its boost in first gear.
Okay.
And it's to help you like not spin it up at low speeds.
That makes sense.
But also it gives you that nice little shove in the back at 2,000 or 2,500, whatever you want.
Right. Yeah.
And also because they have the same gearbox as this car, but the gearing is shorter.
Okay.
Probably through the final drive or something.
Okay.
So again, you don't need the low down the low down punch so much. Whereas this will pull from tick over.
Really?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's so gutsy.
Oh, so
gutsy.
And that's kind of what you want in a car like this, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And to be honest with you, when this car came out, there was this, and there was the Zafira.
Yes, VXR.
There was a GSI to begin with,
there was.
And then there was the VXR, and everyone said, "Oh, this is the rival to that," and it's like, it's not really.
No, it's quite a different.
They're very different ways of doing it. And to be honest with you,
the Zafiras were really firm riding.
The Zafiras were just literally a Johned up Zafira. They were like, it was big body kit, bright colours.
Yeah.
Big wheels,
Yeah.
blue calipers, big buckety seats and everything
I used to think they looked really good. I quite like the way they looked.
Yeah, I mean, they don't drive very well,
No,
but yeah, I know what you
agree.
mean. They do look kind of funky in a way. And strangely for Ford, being that you would not normally associate Ford with being sort of tasteful and contemporary and restrained and stuff like that. Ford's approach to doing this was the S-Max, which was actually a bit of a departure from. You look at a company that come up with like the RS Turbo and the Escort Cosworth.
Yeah.
Well, this is what they come up with.
It was a bit of a strange idea, but I think the reason we're here to talk about, or we are here in the S-Max, is sort of to lament the passing of the MPV in a way.
Yeah.
Because cars like this
the one we're in,
dying.
They are. The one we're in is admittedly, it's not the best choice, because as MPVs go, it was supposed to be a kind of MPV that behaved and drove like an estate.
No, but I actually think it is quite a good choice, because it's an interesting shout, the S-Max, because it was Ford's attempt to do a bit of an MPV last gasp, really, because I think Ford saw the writing was on the wall for the MPV as SUVs started.
Do you think they saw the writing was on the wall, or they're just trying to address something that was being? Because I mean, what killed the MPV?
The SUV. The 7-seat SUV.
You think it's the SUV?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
But why is the SUV selling and the MPV didn't?
Because MPVs always struggled with this kind of big, blobby, bland, kind
perceived
of
image, isn't
mumsy, dadsy image. Yeah, it's a perception of it as being a dreary, boring. I've given up on life.
Yeah,
I've had the kids, and I'm not a person who drives a sports car anymore. Type of thing.
But the silly thing is, if you're driving an SUV, that says the same thing.
Well. To you, yeah, and arguably to me as well. But I think for a lot of people, there is some sort of cognitive split between this is a big, boring minivan, whereas an SUV is a slightly more glamorous lifestyle vehicle.
Oh, it's like
that's kind of the idea.
Range Rover from Wish.
Yeah, pretty much, and that's kind of.
I'm a country gentleman.
That's where car manufacturers have succeeded. Is they've got people to buy a car that has similar, not quite as good, and we'll go into this, versatility in terms of a 7-seat SUV, something like a Skoda Kodiaq or something like that. And people think, oh, well, it's got the 7 seats, therefore it's the same. I mean, you and I both know it's not the same, but what it gives people is that ability to drive around in something that feels roughy, tufty and rugged. And also the other thing about an SUV is, I think for a lot of people, because it's up high and you get a you get good visibility. You feel up high. You feel like you're commanding. That leads to a feeling of safety. That's not to say it's any safer than a normal car, but it leads to a perception of being above it all, being safe, and so on and so forth, which I don't think they get from an MPV with it. Although an MPV is higher riding than a hatchback, it doesn't give you that commanding kind of driving position. The window line is lower, so you feel more exposed, and so on and so forth. I think that's the difference that SUV. That's what SUVs are giving people. Now, where I'm sad is that, as we're going to discuss, MPVs are much, much better at the job of carrying large families than SUVs are.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can sit in here, and the amount of space I've got, I can sit here with my legs crossed like this, you know. I can't do this in half of the modern 7-seat SUVs, you know. And more importantly, the rearmost seats in this, although you're right in what you say, the S-Max was a bit of a halfway house for Ford.
But the Galaxy was the one that had, if you needed the third row more, you'd buy the Galaxy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you lost a bit of height off the top and a bit of length. Yeah. And then the idea with they actually marketed the S-Max as the SAV.
That's right. The sports activity vehicle,
yes. And I have to be honest, you've got to take your head, like, it's not, saying, it drives like a car, it drives like an estate car. It's a cliche. And it really does. Yeah. But this thing handles.
Well, we went out briefly in it just now, and it goes so flat. It's amazing.
Yeah. No, it's ridiculous how fast. I mean, I've taken this around a Nürburgring.
Yeah, I know. I remember.
And with an air fryer in the boot.
Yeah. There are a lot of. I mean, most SUVs wouldn't handle as well as this. No. There are some that will, but it handles very well. The problem is just an image one, and that's the problem, is people stop buying MPVs. I think the problem is MPVs came along, really, they hit their peak in the late 90s, I think, late 90s, early 2000s. That was when people went mad for things like Galaxies and the Citroen Eurovans and so on and so forth, because they were suddenly presented with a vehicle that gave them the option of having 7 seats and being able to carry. So, what that gives you the ability to do when you've got, say you've got 2 kids, it means you can bring your kids' friends home from school with you. It means you can go on a day out with your 2 kids and the grandparents in the back. It gives you so much more flexibility and versatility. Can you give
Harry a lift home from school? It's like, I can't say I haven't got any room. Got loads of room.
No.
More room than I know what to do with.
Yeah. But you see, that's and actually you've hit on something there. More room than I know what to do with. Because I think that was the thing, was with the early MPVs, the big ones, the Galaxies and this.
Yeah, if you had a full scale of Spass.
Quite a lot of people were finding they were using 4 or maybe 5 seats most of the time, and the extra 2 not that much.
No, well that's why cars like the Picasso,
the Zafira and the Picasso came along, because actually then you had 2 seats that kind of folded away and weren't quite so big.
But you basically got the platform of a car that's in the sort of C segment, maybe marginally wider.
Yep.
But honestly, we had an MG ZS as our family car.
Yeah.
An MG ZS Atomics. With a K series 1.8 litre engine.
Did it light your eternal flame?
It did not. Yeah, we had that, and then when we found out we were having another child, another one broke through the net. We thought, right, well, that's it, it's game over. We have to buy an MPV, and I was younger at the time, so I was kind of seeing this as a bad thing. Whereas now I wouldn't. Yep. Now I actually kind of respect and quite like MPVs
because we are old men.
Yes, but also because of the engineering. I see the engineering. I think this is so much better than anything you get now. Yeah. And we got this old Picasso, which was an ex-taxi. Zara Picasso, egg on wheels, blah, blah, blah. Never really liked the car, I have to be honest, but respected it enormously. Very reliable. Yeah. And the thing is, even before the 3rd kid had dropped, and we just had the 2 we were already had, the existing ones. We tried to get rid of them, we couldn't. We had to keep. And we found, what were they at the time? It must have been at 2.5, 3. Life was so much easier with that car. Yeah. Even things like getting them strapped into their seats, the door, like when you open the door at the back, it didn't swing out as far, so it wasn't as close to the car that you were parked next to. Yet the access to get to the seat to strap them in was twice as good.
Because if you look here, well, audio listeners can't. Nobody can see. In fact, nobody can see.
If you're watching on YouTube, you're still not. You've got no advantage.
The length of the rear door in this car is enormous. That means the aperture is enormous. That means you don't need to open the door as far to get as much access to the child seats in here. That is what you're getting there. Yeah. And the bigger MPVs as well had sliding doors, which made life even easier in the car park. You know, that all this.
I know they don't look cool. I get that they don't look cool.
Yeah.
But the only thing to me, to me, an SUV also doesn't look cool. There's no difference. They neither look cool.
No, and I think that's the problem. Is that's where you differ to the majority of the population.
Maybe. And
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying
most,
the reason.
Most people are wrong. I admit. I'm aware of that.
That is the reason. I think that most people are. That's the reason the SUVs have outsold the MPVs.
Cool would be someone who, like a family, who are confident in what they need. They have a car. They picked the right car for the job to give them the best journeys on the road.
I agree.
And if they like their cars, they've got something else in the garage at home that on the weekend they dig out and they take up the track, or they take up the countryside or whatever. Or work on a classic together or something like that.
Basically is what you're saying. What you're saying is you see people.
No, I don't have a car in the garage at home.
Don't you?
No, my garage is.
Yeah, they're all here.
Yeah, they're all here. Yeah, my garage is empty. It's got bikes and house bits.
Lifestyle accessories. Yes. You should have an SUV for those.
Yes. Yes. Ironically, I quite like old school proper off-roaders.
Yeah.
I like the Daihatsu 4-track independent.
Great cars. Yeah, great cars.
There's something about them. I like stuff like that. Yeah. I drove a Defender. Yeah. With massive wheels on it, up to a TD5, up to Scotland and back.
Oof, that's a long way to go on one of those.
In one day. No, not in back in one day. Towed a trailer all the way there, up to Glasgow, and then back down through Dumfries and down the coast. But I enjoy it. I enjoyed it because it was like it's mechanical and it's agricultural, and I'm involved. Yeah. And I'm driving, and the fact that it can go off road as well is great. Yeah. But when you brought that Skoda thing down here, what was that? A Skoda?
Oh gosh,
Cognac or something.
I think it was Kodiak.
Kodiak camera. Yeah. I just remember looking inside it and thinking, right, so it's desperately trying not to be an SUV. So it's trying to look like it's desperately trying not to be an MPV. So it's looking like an SUV. So it's got the downsides of an SUV. And then you look inside and it's cramped. There's less space in it than there is in this.
Yeah, there is. You're right.
But on the outside, it was bigger than this. And I'm thinking, that's just crazy. What a stupid...
And that is the problem with the 7-seat MPVs. The 7-seat SUVs. And I think what's happened is, going back to what I said earlier on about people saying, well, I only really need 4 or 5 seats. They go, well, it's okay. It doesn't matter that the extra seats in the back are small and unusable because I rarely need them. Yeah. But actually what you're ending up with now is some SUVs are coming out where the rear seats are so small as to be basically unused, not even worth having. You know, I've sat in several, because everything if it's a 7-seater, I will try and get in the back as an adult. And I have seen this line in magazine road tests in the past that kind of says something like, oh, the rear seats are only really suitable for children. Just, have you had children? Have you tried to install a child seat in a small back? It is a nightmare. Like, no, that line does not hold any water. It doesn't cut any ice with me anymore now that I've got kids. And, you know, you try and stick... So you say those back seats are unuseful for children, right? So why have they not got Isofix? Why are the Isofix points only on these ones? So many 7-seat SUVs. Put them on seats that fold down like that, they can. They can, because some now do have Isofix on, so they can. But a lot of 7-seat SUVs, you get Isofix on these seats and nothing on those. And I'm like, so if you've got a seat that's Isofix only, you know, which some modern car seats are, you clunk it into these, and then you say, okay, well, we want to take the grandparents out for a day out.
But you can't fold the seats forward because you
can't fold the seats forward because the seats. So you've got to take that out to get the grandparents in the back, and the grandparents are going to be complaining because those seats are really tiny.
Well, they should have driven their own car.
So why have you got a 7-seater?
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly.
It just sort of all defeats the point.
Get yourself a Volvo V50 and be happy. Just go back to estates. Get saloons, estates, hatchbacks, and get an MPV if you need the seats. Because the one thing an MPV does have, in the middle here, these 3 seats across here are all the same size.
Yep, that's great.
And that was one of the reasons we had the Picasso. We had 3 kids, all in kid seats, and they all, you know, like the middle seat.
Yep.
I mean, we took my C6. Oh, there goes the C word jar again. Took my C6 on holiday because this broke. And that's a massive car.
Yep.
But the seat in the middle is a jump seat. That's all it really is.
Yeah, quite.
Although Esther Ranson has sat in that seat.
Wow. What a claim to fame.
Yes.
But no, you're absolutely right. And this is one of the things I love about MPVs is you do have 3 proper seats in the back. You know, these seats will all... We're not going to try and demonstrate it because it will no doubt fail on us and we'll sit here faffing around with the seats for ages. But they will all slide and fold and tumble.
It does.
See, I just said we're not going to demonstrate it. I just said we're not going to demonstrate it. What does he do? There we go, slidey seats. They all slide individually. And you can... This flexibility means that you can have any number of seating combinations. You can put, for example, fold these back ones down, have this one folded too, have 2 or 3 mountain bikes coming through here, and still have 2 usable seats for your kids. That's the beauty of an MPV. The
Picasso had. The Picasso, had the thing where you could remove the seats.
Yes, can you not remove these?
No,
but you can fold these ones down. But you can't
the S-Max, as I say, it's not like quite as hardcore as some of the others. But to be honest with you, I've never needed to remove them.
Yeah, no. Well,
when you fold them, they're completely flat.
Yeah. So you don't. Well, I think that's the point, isn't it? Because they're flat when you fold them, you don't need to actually take them out.
They're level with the boot floor when the back seats are folded down.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So the back seats,
which makes sense. That all makes sense.
You lose a bit of room that way, but they figured we might as well fold them all so it ends up being flat all the way through. I
think that's better because actually, if you remove them, you end up having to find somewhere to put them in your house.
Yeah.
Which I've had when I've had a big van and it's got, with 7 seats in it, and you can remove these clunking great big seats. You have to heft them into your house, and then you're like, well, they'll just sit in the living room while we go and do what we're doing, in our 5-seat mode.
Right.
You've got to find somewhere to put the seats. If you only need the 5 seats, you've got to find... So actually having what this has got, where it all folds down, is much better.
The only thing they've cocked up with this is the parcel shelf.
Yeah, there's nowhere to put the parcel shelf.
Your parcel shelf, there's nowhere to put it when you, even though it's retractable. You either sit in the back and wear it like a moustache. You can't even fit it in the footwell under your feet. It's too wide.
Yep. Yeah.
The doors won't shut. It's a stupid design.
Silly.
There are a couple of things
that aren't quite
Ford have been Ford at.
Yeah.
Every now and then Ford do something really dumb, and you think, what? Flawed. Very good. Flawed.
But there are actually just clinging on a few MPVs still left on the market.
Is the Dacia Logan, does that count?
No, the Jogger is what you're thinking.
The Jogger, sorry.
The Jogger is an MPV, yes.
It looks like it's trying to be an SUV.
It's sort of, there's definitely SUV. Now, a few manufacturers have done this.
Just be an MPV.
I completely agree with you. But I can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, look, okay, this has got some SUV bits on it, so we'll fool you into thinking it's SUV, but trust me, take your medicine because this is good for you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we'll put some SUV on,
but you know, so stupid.
But there is still the Volkswagen Touran is still on sale, which is a proper 7-seat Zafira-sized SUV.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
MPV.
Fair play to Volkswagen.
You can still buy that. You can still buy a Touran.
And for taxi drivers, I suppose.
The Volkswagen Multivan as well, which is an MPV. So the
Multivan,
Multivan,
not just a transporter or something?
No, it's not. It used to be, but the latest Multivan isn't. The latest Multivan is actually on a car platform rather than the van platform.
Okay.
Which means although it looks like a van, it drives more like a car. And that's a really nice car. Again, quite expensive, unfortunately, but then MPVs just are nowadays. I guess because they just haven't got the economies of scale. But Multivan's a really good one. And it's got all the kind of movable seats. It's even got like a little, you get 2 seats here and 3 in the back, and you can have a little table between the 2 seats.
That's what the Espas I was in the other day did.
Which is quite cool.
Yeah.
There's the ID Buzz, which is the electric MPV that I'm going to hopefully be getting later on this year to drive, so that will be fun.
Has that got a table?
Yes, I think it has got a table. No, it hasn't got a table in it. It's got fold-down tables on Picasso-style type things. But useless. Burn it.
Crap.
But what else is there? So there are a couple of 5-seat MPVs still on sale, which are the BMW 2 Series Active Tourer and the Mercedes. Yeah, still on sale. And the Mercedes B-Class is still on sale as well, and it's quite a good little thing as well.
Has it got 3 individual seats in the back?
I don't think they have. No, they are more like tall hatchbacks than MPVs.
Yeah, that's when the argument starts to fall over, because then people go, well, why do you need one of those? Just get a hatchback. It's just a little bit taller.
But actually,
and it's like with cars like the Picasso and the Scenic, it was like, no, they're not. They've genuinely got more space in the back.
Yeah.
When you get a car that's kind of like the B-Class, where it's like that is just a fat hatchback.
Well, it kind of is, but also I can see the logic, which is that because you have that extra height, you can add legroom because you can sit the seat squabs higher.
Yeah.
So therefore, you can have more space in less length, if that makes sense. And that is one of the arguments for the smaller SUVs as well. A lot of manufacturers do make is the little inky-dinky ones, like the current Puma, the Seat Arona, the Volkswagen T-Roc. Yeah, the crossovers. The idea with them, what some manufacturers say, is they actually take up less space on the road because you're getting the sort of space you'd have in a golf-sized hatchback, but in a shorter, taller car. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And those cars, to be fair, although they're dressed up like SUVs, they really aren't. They're just tall hatchbacks. You know, they're I don't really have a huge problem with those because I'm like, they're not. I still
look at the front of them though, and I just think like the front end is so high. If a kid runs out,
I mean, they passed the pedestrian protection crash test well, so
but if they were a lower hatchback, they'd pass it even better.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
I just think it's just needlessly high. It's needlessly big, you know. Yeah,
but I mean, going back to what I was saying, I think sadly the MPV is dying a death. But I do think, to be fair to Volkswagen, they've really tried. I tell you what has replaced the MPV is the van-based MPV. So the vans with windows, the Berlingos and the Tornado Connects and the Caddies.
Oh, okay.
So you can now buy a Tornado Connect, which I think is the best of the bunch at the moment, and you can have a Grand Tornado Connect, which is an extended 7-seat version.
But does it have a 2.5 litre 5-cylinder Volvo engine?
It does not. I'm afraid not. In actual fact, it comes with, I think it has a because Tornado Connect's just a Volkswagen Caddy these days. So it has a Volkswagen 1.5 litre petrol or a 2 litre diesel, I think, in it. So
it's quite big for a diesel engine these days.
Entirely unspectacular. Yeah, no, it's about normal. Volkswagen's diesels are all 2 litres.
Oh, they haven't gone for they haven't fallen into that sort of 1.5 diesel.
No, they haven't category. Actually. In fact, if you want to buy 115, the low-powered Volkswagen diesel, it's just a detuned 2 litre these days. Like any of the Octavia and the Golf, they come with their eco diesel, the more economical diesel version, which they're still selling.
How many diesels actually get sold now?
Not many.
No.
Really not many. Which is a shame, a huge shame, because there are some really good diesels on the market now. Particularly the particular one that springs to mind is the Merc C-Class. Because Mercedes, where everyone else went, no, we're not going to bother developing diesels anymore, Mercedes carried on. So you can now buy a mild hybrid diesel, Mercedes C-Class, which is mild. So mild hybrid is, sorry, just to explain, mild hybrid is not like a full hybrid where you've got like a big, I say big, a proper, like a Prius or something like that, is a full hybrid. A mild hybrid doesn't have a battery and a separate motor. Essentially, it's what's known as a starter generator, which is essentially a beefed up starter motor that can act as a dynamo or generator, basically.
Right, yeah.
And that then feeds a larger, so a 48 volt battery instead of a 12 volt battery, which stores up a bit of juice. And what that means is when the car comes to a stop, it can turn the engine off while keeping the ancillaries running slightly earlier. And it can add a little bit of extra boost. A mild hybrid normally only gives you like 2 or 3 extra to the gallon. Think of it as a petrol diesel car, basically, just with a tiny little bit of extra shove. Anyway, Merc has made this diesel hybrid C-Class, mild hybrid C-Class, that I had on a test a little while ago. And honestly, I left home to drive down here to Southampton to see my folks. And I got around the M25 to the Wisley Junction where it's all rubbish at the moment. I wasn't trying. I was just doing my normal driving. So
130 miles an hour.
111 million miles an hour. And then, slowing down, speeding up in traffic, slowing down, speeding up, slowing down. Got on the A3, looked at the trip computer. I'd done 73 miles to the gallon, which I was just blown away by. Why did we let this technology go? Can you imagine if we kept developing it, 73, I wasn't even trying. I got 73 to the gallon out of it, It's mad. So I do lament diesels a little bit. I do lament the loss of diesels, but, and you get the same with a lot of these, the modern stuff. It can get fakely, I know I keep banging on about it, even my Skoda.
Have you got a Skoda?
I've got a Skoda.
I never mention it.
I know, it's a rare treat. Maybe we should have a Skoda swear jar as well.
Skoda
swear jar. No, yes, even that I can get 68 to the gallon out of. Without, if I've got nobody on board.
I can get 68 to the gallon out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you can't. Off a cliff.
I can't. No.
I was going to say.
No.
I was going to say, yeah, you probably can. And I thought, no, hang on a sec.
6.8.
6.8 to the gallon.
No,
it's literally using fuel right now, even though the engine's off.
Yes. Yes. Yes, it's hooked up to its veins. If you're really, 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 because it's got such tall gearing, if you're really not in a hurry, you can just on a run nudge 40 if you don't stop.
Yeah.
But
that's actually not bad.
It's quite hard to do. You can do it, but you can't use cruise control.
You got to be really...
Yeah, you got to be like really 55, diligent. 60 mile an hour, behind the lorry, slipstreaming, everything like that. Yeah. But you can drive it on cruise control.
Yeah.
And as long as you don't go fast, then you probably between 32 and 34 on a run.
So I think we should have a little bit of a think about our favourite MPVs of the past. What? I mean, I know you love this S-Max, but we sat.
You wouldn't have thought that if you were at Brands Hatch at the end of the BTCC last year when I was swearing at it because I was trying to pull away up a hill and it had no traction control and it kept just spinning the wheels up on South Bank. That was doing my bloody head in.
Yes.
Yeah, it hasn't got traction control.
No.
It's because it's the first 3 months Ford. Of production.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, I got told all 2.5Ts have traction control. Oh, really wicked. Bought one blind, went up to get it, no traction control.
So they just brought it in after 3 months?
Yeah, it's just after the first 3 months. So yeah, it's like June 2006, this one. It's a really early one.
Really early, yeah. Because I was going to say, because the thing is, it's all good and well us sitting here lamenting the death of the MPV, but we should, bring out some good examples of the breed and some ones that we really... Are there MPVs we fancy? Is there an MPV you'd actually like to own?
That's pushing it.
Like you'd actually, I've got one. Mark 1 Espaces.
I'm not really mad on Mark 1 Espaces.
Are you not?
Not really. No, not
they
really.
Look like a TGV on the road, like a proper old.
They don't.
Old 80s TGVs.
Let's be honest. A TGV is a train.
Yes.
Right, and this is a Renault Espace.
You park a Renault Espace. There's a picture somewhere of one. I'll dig it out.
You park a Renault Espace next to a TGV. Yeah. You won't be able to tell the difference.
Exactly.
You're crazy.
That's what I'm telling you.
There's something very cool about the Espace because it was built by Matra.
Yeah.
So that instantly makes it
yeah.
sub-zero cool. Yeah. So you can say what you want about people carriers.
True.
If it's built by Matra, it's cool.
Tell you another one. Toyota Previa.
Yeah, mid-engine.
Toyota Previa.
Mid-engine.
Looks like an egg. Looks like a futuristic space
a door on one
egg.
Side.
Yes.
But what is it? Is it the Lucida or the Estima?
That's the same car, isn't it?
No. One of them's narrower.
Is it?
Yeah, I discovered this.
Oh my God,
Simon told me a little while back. One of them is like 4 inches narrower or something to get it into a different class. So you put it's either the Estima or the Lucida, one of them.
No,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
No, I didn't know that.
That's
and now
sensational.
after I got told that, I thought, I'm looking at it going, I can't not see it now.
What a great bit of pub quiz trivia.
It's just very slightly narrower.
I'll have to look that up.
It's something to do with the taxation class or something like that. Yeah,
fascinating.
In Japan.
Yeah,
but I remember my lasting memory of the Previa when I was a kid, growing up. I grew up in Eastleigh. Yeah. And they used to have the Eastleigh Motor Show. Do you remember that?
Oh, gosh. On that common by Fleming Park?
Yes.
Yes.
And all the local dealers would turn up.
Yep, I do remember that. Yes.
Not drugs, cars. It's the opposite now. And yeah, you basically had this big motor show. And sometimes it was on the field near the M27. Where the rugby is. But yes. It changed. It chopped and changed. And basically, I would go down with my dad.
Yeah.
And you'd basically just run around every single car there, opening the door and sitting in them, and shutting the door. That's it. And then hearing the clunk and smelling the new car. And Rover always did very well.
I bet they did.
With the new car smell and the door clunks, Rover were very, very good.
Yeah.
Proton, actually, surprisingly quite good with the clunks.
I'm surprised.
But I remember getting into the Previa. And there was a guy in the Previa, some dad or something like that, was already in the Previa talking to his kids. And he was like, God, it looks like the Enterprise in here. And every time I see a Toyota Previa dashboard now, I can't help but think Star Trek.
They were quite futuristic inside.
Oh, they were nuts.
They were quite fancy looking.
Column shift.
Yeah.
Mid-engined.
Yeah. With the big kind of bit of the dashboard that poked out to kind of take account of the fact the engine was in there somewhere.
Yeah, but it was under your feet.
Was it under your feet? Yeah. It was...
It's in the floor. It was laid flat. Yeah.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah. It was real. And ones in Japan, some of them were 4-wheel drive, because obviously they need to be.
Just the engineering involved in that.
And they were 8-seater. Previous were 8-seater.
Were they 8 seats?
They had 2 rows of 3.
I didn't know.
2 rows of 3. Bench seat in the middle.
Yeah.
But it was the end of it was slidable. I think the whole seat was slidable.
Oh right, okay.
I think pretty sure it was a bench and then individuals, or I could have been wrong. Maybe it was the other way around. But that was a pretty funky one.
Yeah.
I quite like the Mark III Espace that came in the other day. I was quite taken with that.
Yeah, that's a great looking car. We talked about that last week.
Yeah, I was quite taken with that one. I quite like the dashboard of the C8s and the 807s and things. They're quite, but I know they're hideously unreliable.
I actually quite like the kind of chunky design of their predecessors, the Eurovans, the Synergy, the 806 and that lot. They had this kind of blocky look.
Do you know, if you got the top of the range one, they were 6-seater, but if you got the bottom and middle of the range ones,
captain's chairs in the top ones. Yeah. Do you know what's funny is nowadays, what passes for an MPV these days, it isn't really, but Citroen and Peugeot will try and sell you a van with windows as an MPV, like a Traveller or a Space Tourer. And you can, if you want to spec those up, you can spec them up with 6 captain's chairs instead of the 7-seat or 8-seat layouts. So this is exactly the same kind of methodology.
You get a good road trip in a Previa. Wouldn't it be a good road trip?
Brilliant.
Go and watch the F1 in Belgium or something.
In a
Previa.
Yeah.
I tell you, one I quite like the interior of. Honda FRV. That's the 6-seater.
Now I can remember. Oh yes,
3 abreast at the front.
Yeah. That is a really, really good idea.
They've got funky looking. Well, I don't know if it is personally.
Okay.
As a car.
Okay.
Because what's the one thing you struggle with in this country?
Width.
Well, actually, no. We struggle with a lot of stuff.
I was going to say. You want me to name one thing?
Yeah, one thing. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Width. Car parking. And stuff.
True.
Parking spaces. And the same thing with the multiplier, which I'm
I was just going to come on to the multiplier. I love the multiplier.
I can't.
You can't. You're not a multiplier fan. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I also love...
Yeah, but you love it for other people.
No, I'd have one.
Really?
I'd definitely have
a Mark 1?
I'll tell you what, I'd have one if it weren't for the fact that I know it's a Fiat of a certain generation. Everything's going to fall off inside.
I don't think they're that bad.
But I remember when I worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, we had Puntos of that kind of era. And they just, everything, like the door trims the door seals.
Yeah, the rental cars.
You'd open the door and the door seal would be hanging from the actual Like literally drooping down in the middle of the door where you wanted to get into it. It's just like, that's so cool.
You know, but to be fair, I used to do multi-drop van delivery driving. And the Volkswagen Transporters, the T5s were like that. The T5s, the window switches and the doors are always knackered.
Oh, really?
The hinges on the back doors are always broken. There was certain things that you could tell always
just standard T5 things.
It drove okay, but I actually preferred the Vivaros. They had some
really?
Vivaros.
That was a funky looking van.
I actually thought they were nicer to drive.
We've ended up on vans. We started on MPVs.
Yeah, it's the extreme of the.
I do like a multiplier. I do like a multiplier. I'd have a multiplier for myself if I could be assured of it. Do you know the best thing? What I love most about the multiplier?
No, but I have a thing you're going to tell me.
I'm certain. Well, that's the point of a podcast. On the backs of the multipliers, the early ones.
Is this the sticker that says
they had a sticker?
Yeah, I've had the sticker.
They had the sticker that said, "Just wait till you see the front."
You think
this is bad. Wait till you see the front, which I just loved. I absolutely loved. I thought
I should like the multiplier because I should, being the sort of way I am with cars, I should go, no, fair play, fit, well done, you've got balls.
Yeah, that's why I like it, because it is just ballsy.
But
and have you seen? There's a couple of people who've done like really well sorted modified ones.
Oh, there's one with they got them with the Fiat
coupe turbo engines. And hooning around the Nürburgring.
Do you know what the owners club is called for them?
Go on.
The Ugly Bug Club.
I like that.
Apparently, they actually handle quite well. Because
I've heard this.
Because the weight is very low. Although they look really top edge. You know, looks wise, they remind me of the aliens on Mars Attacks.
I see it. Yes, with the giant craniums. Yeah, I get it.
I get it. Yeah. But the weight at the top, it's just glass.
It's just glass, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everything's quite low down.
All weight's quite low down, and they've got quite a wide track.
Yeah.
And a short wheelbase.
I can see that working. Actually.
So apparently they're actually quite decent round corners.
I fancy one.
But I really don't.
I really
don't. Yeah. I have to be honest. If someone said to me, "What's the best MPV of the past?" Well, if we consider the MPV, the Espace onwards, I know I'm aware that there were versions in America that predated it, but proper MPV, commercial, big selling in Europe, really, and ones in America are more like minivan. This is. I honestly think the S-Max would be up there for me.
I was going to say, I was trying to think while you were saying that. S-Maxes are probable.
If you have a family of 5, you really can't do much better, I don't think, because you can take friends and people out in the boot when you need to. Yeah. It's nice to drive.
Yeah.
They're easy to run. They're easy to buy. It's just reliability it's a bit of a fall.
Yeah, it was particularly. I think I was doing something the other day on MPVs for somebody, and the latest generation S-Max is the last generation, not this one, but the one that followed it, had a really bad record.
Yeah, well, the later ones of these did as well.
Did they?
Well, there was the power shift gearbox, which is known as power shift.
Yes, which is not very good.
Yeah.
But I think actually the later S-Maxes, the power shifts were so bad, the later ones switched to a 6F35, which is a torque converter.
Might have done.
The ZF gearbox.
That's the one that replaced this. The power shift's the one that replaced...
That's it.
This, because they couldn't get these through the emissions, through the Euro 5?
Okay.
Because this is quite an old engine.
Right, yeah.
So that's when they replaced it with the 2-litre turbo with the automated gearbox, which was just guff.
Yeah.
Actually faster, more powerful than this, believe it or not.
Yeah,
but
even though the gearbox was more reliable on those later ones, everything else wasn't, from what I've read.
Yeah, I can believe it.
I could be wrong on that, but that's just
I can believe it. It's never been... It's never let us down. I mean, it has hiccuped a few times as time's gone on.
It's never let you down, apart from the time you couldn't go on holiday in it.
Yeah, apart from that, and the time, and there was also the time on holiday when we had to limp it back. we had to pull over every hour to let it cool down.
Yeah. So when you say it's never let you down,
well, it got us there, and it would have only let us down before the holiday that it didn't go on if it had failed to get us back so we could change the car.
Ah, true.
So it got us back, and then we managed to take everything, and then tried to get a boot full of stuff from a Ford S-Max into a Citroen C6, and realised
why MPVs are good.
Some economies are going to have to be made here. Yeah. We cannot take the toaster. You can take a basketball or a football. You can't take both. It's stuff like that. And so I mean, I had a very good time on that holiday because I got to drive my C6 around France, which was much better to drive than, or much more fun, than driving this. But yes, okay, yeah, technically, I suppose that did let it down a little bit. But
I do agree with your assessment that the S-Max is probably one of the best.
It's up there.
One of the best ones.
I also think the Picasso, and I'm not saying that because I had one. I'm just going through cars I had. I'm just talking about that mini MPV class of car.
We're talking about the first generation Picasso.
Yeah, the Zara Picasso. I can't think, like, if you go back and look at all the others that were around that time, the Zafira, you have to give it to the Zafira. It was the first one to have the
Flex 7 seats.
Yeah, but it didn't have 3 individual seats in the middle. It just had a bench in the back.
That's true. Yeah.
The C-Max didn't. That wasn't as roomy inside as the Picasso. The Scenic had a smaller middle seat.
Yep.
It was the first one, admittedly. Yep. Well, what would you say the Nissan Prairie was?
Well,
in the 80s, one with the B-pillar.
The Nissan Prairie was, but I think that it's a bit like the Espace, isn't it? We said proper MPVs are from the Espace onwards. There's kind of a point at which, we think of the Megane Scenic as the car that started that small MPV trend, even though it probably wasn't.
Yeah.
It
the one that made it popular, though,
it defined it.
Yeah.
It said, this is what small MPV looks like, The Prairie was an odd fish, and it was very much an acquired taste. You really had to be thinking of practicality and reliability above all else to want to drive around in one of those, because it was essentially it was a bit like a multipler without the charm.
Yeah.
Like it had that kind of top heavy fishbowl look.
Yeah, they were funny
really
looking.
had to kind of be okay with having something that was deeply ugly.
Yeah.
For the sake of practicality.
But I think
nowadays, if I saw one at Photo, I'd be like, or something like that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Like, whoa, hello, let's have a look at that. Yeah.
I'm not saying that I would think they're awful cars now, but I've always found them particularly.
Well, it's going to be easy. The easiest way to finish off the podcast, because it's probably time to wrap it.
Yeah,
is I was going to say we should say which are the worst MPVs, but we don't need to because we're both going to say the SsangYong Rodius, and then
that's it.
Yeah, that's what you were going to say.
Well, I might say the SsangYong Turismo, which is the one that came after the Rodius.
I don't know that one.
Well, the Turismo is the one I've driven. I've not driven the Rodius. But yeah.
I don't need to drive it.
I'm splitting hairs.
Oh, I'll tell you what one I have driven that I actually found very fun. Okay. You're going to be surprised.
Go on.
Kia Sedona. Right?
Do you know what? I know exactly what you mean.
The Mark 1 Kia Sedona with the turbo diesel with the bonnet on.
Kind of fun in an awful, like, it's bad, but it's quite entertaining.
It was cool.
Like quite ploddy and quite clunky, but
the engine sounded like it had a big fan on the end of it. It was like,
yeah.
I've
driven one of those. Again, going back to my days in Enterprise, we had a few of those on the. Were they the Mark 1 or the Mark 2? I can't remember whether we had. Yeah, we had Sedonas, and I remember driving them going, "Gosh, this is really quite cheap and nasty," but it kind of
endearing
in itself, kind of very.
In fact, actually, I drove a Kia Carens as well.
Oh gosh,
that was bad. It was beige with brown interior. I think it was Y-Reg.
Oh, that's very early ones, then, isn't it?
Yeah, it was.
There were a lot of. Do you know what? I know we're ending the podcast, and we will end, but we haven't really touched on the mass of kind of fairly stodgy, turgid attempts at MPVs that were there. Do you remember the Mazda MPV? It was so boring they couldn't think of anything other to call it than the Mazda MPV. It was just the Mazda. What about the Vauxhall Sintra? Do you remember the Vauxhall Sintra?
I remember the Vauxhall Sintra. That was lifted from
America. It was it was a Chevrolet Venture or whatever it was. Yeah. That was
one of the ones that gets a lot of hate because it's cool to hate things and smash them up on TV is the Toyota Picnic, and I'm not convinced that one deserves all the hate.
It's something about it that's deeply dweeby.
Yeah, there is. Oh yeah. But what's more dweeby? Avoiding buying a car because you're worried about what other people think about it.
Yeah.
Or owning it. You just own it. You'd be like, that's my decision. I am owning that decision.
I mean, this is the thing. I think the thing with the Picnic is I think there was a way of owning it, i.e. having the Megane Scenic.
Yeah.
Or there was having the Picnic, which is full on. Yeah, there are ways.
It's a little bit. Hi, kids.
Yeah, it's that kind of
with the open-toed sandals.
Do you know what the Picnic is? It's the automotive. Do you remember? You watched Red Dwarf presumably?
A long time ago.
The Picnic is the automotive equivalent of Dwayne Dibley. That's what I always felt. So
it's Pat kind of on bit, Ghosts.
It's a bit
with the arrow through his neck.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a bit
Sunday school.
The other one that was around at the time was do you remember the Nissan Almera Tino?
Yes.
Again, another kind of
scopping looking car
and
that
then,
was.
And then Daewoo did a... God, what was the Daewoo one called? I can't even remember.
Takuma,
that's it. The
It looked
Takuma.
it looked like a tumour. And there was the... someone in my road has a Hyundai Matrix.
Oh, yes. Again.
It's got Pininfarina written on the side of it. I'm looking at it going, they didn't. Really?
I think he literally did.
Maybe it was two different designs, and like the book got wet.
Yeah.
And two pages stuck together because it looks like it's like the window line just changes.
Yeah,
and
I
goes
know, it's hilarious, isn't it?
And I'm like, it's two different cars.
Yeah.
So what's going on here?
Yeah, there were some fairly poor attempts at MPVs, weren't they?
There's some horrendous attempts at MPVs, which doesn't help the brand to sell the concept.
No, and it sort of helps to explain why people went off them a little bit, doesn't it? When there were that many kind of really turgid ones.
Companies have never done an MPV. Well, no, that's a lie. They have done an MPV.
Go on.
But a company that really you'd surprise because you think I thought they would have gone for that, but they haven't. They've only ever done it once.
Volvo's never done an MPV.
That's actually surprising that Volvo hasn't actually.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
That's why I went there.
You think
you would expect Volvo would do an MPV?
Yeah, it would have been a good one as well.
No, yeah, it would have been. I think they actually, if you, in the deepest, darkest corners of the internet, I think you can find Volvo design studies and MPVs. I think they did think about it.
They should have done it.
They never did.
Then that bloody SUV that was horrible. That XC90. Oh, it's one of the, honestly, that
you
probably,
don't like that.
That would go down one of the worst cars I've driven.
Oh yeah, you drove one, yeah, you didn't.
I drove one. There was that's one of the cars I've driven it and went, this is horrendous. This is so it was like I've driven cars that are worse, but I expected them to be worse. This was supposed to be all right.
Nice,
yeah. And it was awful.
Oh, but
no, a manufacturer that you'd be surprised. Mm-hmm. In fact, I keep saying that, but then I keep thinking of another one.
Saab.
No, I'm going to say Peugeot. Peugeot have only ever done... Yeah, no, they have done one.
Yeah.
But they've literally done the Eurovans, which are a badge exercise with Fiat and Citroën Lancia and everything. And they did the first version of the 5008.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yes.
Nothing else. They didn't do anything in the mini MPV class because they kept going with the 307 SW and the 308 SW.
They did do. The first 3008 was a mini MPV.
No, it wasn't. It was like a crossover type thing.
Okay, it was a bit crossovery, but it was definitely much more.
It had a bench seat in the back. It did
have a sliding bench seat though.
Well, it was a big blobby hatchback.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go. That was. I certainly wouldn't look at.
Okay, I'd say it's kind of halfway between.
I wouldn't look at a Picasso and say that was a rival to it.
Here's the other really interesting thing, and this is a good thing to close out on, is Peugeot did the thing that actually is quite canny, and it's won them quite a lot of sales. Which is that the second 5008 is, to all intents and purposes,
my brother had one of those.
An SUV. You look at it and you're like, that's an SUV. So they've kind of won the marketing battle there. Yeah. But if you actually look at it, it doesn't have the ground clearance of an SUV. And inside, it has 3 individual rear seats and folding rear seats. And the 3 individual rear seats slide forwards and backwards and roll over. And the floor is lower than a normal SUV because it hasn't got the ground clearance.
Right.
What they've done is they've made an MPV and then styled it to look like an SUV. And actually, it kind of does have that. For that second generation 5, I haven't driven the latest one, but I presume it follows the same logic. That second generation 5008, everybody says it's an SUV because that's how Peugeot picture it. They pulled a blinder. Because they sold tons of the things. Because everybody thinks it's an SUV.
Well,
but actually, it has all the versatility of an MPV.
And I remember my wife went out in it. And she came back and she said it's much more cramped inside than this. In the back, because she was sat in the back.
It probably is a little... Yeah, to be fair, it probably is a little bit. And even...
But it probably isn't any bigger on the outside than this. And
the other thing I would say is actually the rear seats are about as usable as in this, I would say. Like that, which is actually quite rare in a 7-seat SUV of that size.
Yeah.
And it won lots of kind of, I'd say family SUV of the year type awards because it was an SUV that was much better at being a replacement for an MPV, if that makes sense.
Just think, why can't we just go back to MPVs?
Because nobody buys them. That's the problem.
So the problem is people.
Yeah. And on that cheery note, it's time to end. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for watching, if you've been watching. And we will see you next time on Overbore. Bye.
Bye.